Hey everyone, hope you're doing well today. I want to talk, and actually I'm going to do this for the next three series or the next three videos. And I want to talk about three bad words, or so we view them, and talk about them as you know, a lot of times we don't even use some of these words, two of these words, but they're the words sin, transgression, and iniquity. And they're all referencing kind of in the same area. Today, I'm going to talk about sin, and then next week I'll talk about transgression, and then the next week I'll talk about iniquity. And they all have a little bit of a different meaning. You know, sin is not even a religious word. It's a Hebrew word, hata-a, and hata-a in the Greek, I believe is how you pronounce that. What it actually means, it means to miss the mark or miss the goal. So for instance, some Israelites were training to sling their shots, sling their rocks, and they would not hata-a, they would not miss the mark. They were so good that they would not miss the mark. And the whole point of that word sin is talking about when, for instance, Cain and Abel, the sin was crouching at the door, the hata-a of missing the goal, of missing the mark. And here's everything that it's all about. Here's where sin, hata-a, hata-a, comes into play for our lives. It's when we miss the mark of honoring God or miss the mark of honoring others. Meaning we're not loving God correctly and not honoring Him with our lives, or we're not honoring other people. So we can sin in those just by simply not doing those things. In my life, if I fail to honor God, if I fail to recognize Him, I'm sinning against Him. In my life, if I fail to honor other people, this is where we come in probably mostly in our lives, is that I'm dishonoring God by not honoring His creation and not loving His creation. That's our sin. It's not the individual moral things that you and I probably, if you've ever grown up in any kind of religious organization, oh, you're sinning because you're doing that activity. That is the issue of us. If it's when we're not loving other people, it's when we're not loving God. And really it comes back to that whole aspect of imaging God. That's our role. We are imagers of God. So what would God look like? Well, our lives should implement and display what God looks like. Ultimately, when God becomes a human named Jesus the Christ, He knew no sin because He always honored God and He always honored others. And that was fulfillment of that. That's the sin that He was perfect. That was the sinless life that He lived, that He always imaged God in the earth by loving God and loving other people. So sometimes I think we even avoid this word because we think it's a religious word and we don't even utilize it. But it's not a religious word. It's talking about, again, missing the mark or missing the goal in our lives. Sin, Paul writes about this in Romans, and he says that's innate in us, that as humans, we are born with, not because of Adam. That's what brought death. But inside of us, we have the ability to choose not to honor and love God and not to honor and love others. And so that's the sin that Scripture is talking about. And it's not us that is choosing to do that. It's the sin. This is what Paul writes. It's the sin in us, the missing the mark in our very DNA of how we were created, because we can choose to do that. Do we not want to do things? The personal sins in our lives that we do, that we call sin, God's not wanting us to do that. Those personal sins that we do are destroying us. That if I choose behavior that God has said, hey, don't participate in that, it's because that behavior is either going to hurt someone else, and God doesn't want other humans hurt, or it's going to hurt me, and God doesn't want me hurt just as equally. And God doesn't want us to destroy ourselves. And he's not trying to ruin our party. He's trying to keep us from destroying ourselves. But ultimately, we're forgiven by his grace of the sin. That's what caused the world to be chaotic, and what Jesus set back in order by his actions to restore and annihilate the chaos. And we're to bring that to light, to be a light in the world of what has been accomplished by him, that order has been restored. The spiritual realm doesn't hold authority over the earth, and that we are in charge again by him, our king and our nation. Look, I want to encourage you today. It's the simplest thing. This is how Jesus described, what's the greatest commandment? Honor God with everything that's within you. All of our heart, all of our soul, all of our being, all of our mind, everything that we can do and be, honor God. And the second is just as important. Love your brother as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's everyone. Those two things, and they're actually even broken down in the 10 Commandments. The first 5 are how we can honor God. The second 5 are how we can honor others. And that's what it deals with. So don't miss the mark by not honoring God and not honoring others. I bless you with health and healing, wisdom and knowledge, power and prosperity, and the gifts and the fruits of the Spirit of God to be evident and flowing in your life. I hope you have a fantastic week.